Well, love it or hate it, and I'm just going to go out on a ledge here and assume that you hate it. The carbon tax lost a lot, if not all, of its gusto when the federal Liberal government decided last year to offer a carve-out for oil-heated homes. Oil-heated homes that can mostly be found in Atlantic Canada. Atlantic Canada, where a lot of people vote Liberal. I think we can all agree that was a completely boneheaded move, one that not only undermined carbon pricing in this country, but will likely cost Trudeau the next election. Well, my next guest no doubt agrees it was a boneheaded move, but her and her government have taken it a step further. Here to talk us through what the latest in the Saskatchewan government's fight against the carbon tax is our very own Minister of Justice, Bronwyn Eyre. Bronwyn Eyre, thank you so much for taking the time and welcome to the Evan Bray Show.
Pleasure to be here, Tamara.
Okay, so the Premier had said in April that the Canada Revenue Agency would be auditing the province over our non-payment of the carbon tax. And then we see this video from you last week announcing that your government is filing an injunction against the CRA. Explain to me what happened between April and that video last week.
Well, first of all, I'll share with you what happened between that video last week and this morning, because I think it's important to share what is a breaking development, which is that we filed what's called an interim injunction on Friday, and we were successful. We obtained a stay. We obtained a stop on the garnishment, and we're confirming as we speak that the funds were not garnished. So pretty important development, and we'll stay tuned for that during the course of the day. But
so that's not to say that they won't be garnished. It's just basically that this court in Vancouver, I'm assuming, has said, okay, we will hear your arguments before moving ahead either way.
Well, the hearing of the arguments goes on. This was an interim injunction, as I say, to stop the funds from leaping out of our account. And we were successful in obtaining that stay on the garnishment. So that is significant.
When were the funds supposed to leap out of Saskatchewan's coffers?
Well, the Canadian Revenue Agency was trying to do it last week. And that's why we announced that we were filing the interim injunction, the application, which I announced in the video last week, which you referenced, that we will be, doing everything we can to challenge that, and certainly we can get into the reasons as to why. But in the meantime, we became aware that this was in the course of happening, and so did everything we could. And as I say, late Friday got this before a judge at the federal court in Vancouver, and were successful. So onward and upward.
All right. So what comes next then?
Well, as announced last week, we continue to argue, and will be arguing in court, that the garnishment by the federal government is something that they cannot do. Long-held common law principle, baked right into the Constitution, that under Section 126, that the federal government cannot garnish the bank account of a province. There is a process. We were following that process, and that process flows from the legislation of the carbon tax, and it's a tax process, which is ironic because it was never supposed to be a tax. But that process goes really ultimately through the federal tax court, and that's a separate thing. But that was something that we were undertaking. We had made our arguments. We feel we have very strong arguments, and that was that. But there is, of course, also this issue of the garnishment. And, the federal government likes to go after bank accounts, as we know, and that's what they were trying to do, through a means that they actually legally, is our position, cannot do.
But wait, the federal government likes to go after bank accounts. Absolutely. I don't think anybody really has great feelings towards the CRA, but the provincial government does too. I mean, I'm a small business owner. If I don't pay my PST to the province, you guys are going to be coming after me.
The problem with this, Tamara, of course, always was the fair application of this. And you referenced it right off the top. I mean, what we saw when we saw the carve out for Atlantic Canadians was a violation of the minimum national standard which the carbon tax was supposed to apply under. And when the carbon tax case was argued in front of the Supreme Court, one of the things that the Supreme Court justices raised the most alarm about, if you read the decision, was unequal application and moving away from minimum national standards. And it's in black and white. A number of them said, as soon as you would do that, and exercise potential regional favoritism, targeting of, one industry over another, one province over another, you would have a problem. And that's what we see with the Atlantic carve out.
So just a second then. Why not challenge the specific exemption of the home heating oil then? Instead, your government just chose to break the law and not pay the tax. Why not challenge that specific exemption? I know this is something that Premier Danielle Smith over in Alberta had talked about at the end of last year. I don't think we've really heard of anything since then, but I'm assuming that they didn't go ahead with it because the Supreme Court of Canada, when they make a ruling, they're not very quick to go back on it. So you're saying that you have a problem with the ruling of the Supreme Court, but the government has not challenged the exemption of the home heating oil.
Well, two things on that. I mean, I think Alberta, and I'm not going to speak for Alberta, but I think they would do it if they could do it. I mean, they have a different system in that they don't have the Crown utilities, and we have the Crown utilities in this province, and we chose to not collect the carbon tax on home heating, thereby extending exactly the same exemption to the citizens of this province, that was extended to the citizens of Atlantic Canada. We support that. We understand their frustration. But the point is that you simply cannot choose winners and losers when you are applying the carbon tax. You cannot say to one province, you're off the hook. And we'll be exempting you for, let's face it, purely political reasons. We will tell the West, you should elect more Liberals and you would get the same treatment.
But Minister Eyre, you're the Minister of Justice. You're the Attorney General of this province. It is your job to uphold the laws of this province. So it feels ironic to hear the Minister of Justice saying you can't apply this way, this way, and this way. But you guys are picking and choosing what laws you want to follow based on what you think is fair or unfair. There's such a ring of irony in this conversation, hearing this from the Minister of Justice. Maybe it shouldn't be you talking on it. Maybe it should be the Premier talking on it. But do you not feel that your role has become very politicized when it should be really a black and white, the law is the law role?
Fair application of the law is one of the most ancient precepts of the law. And so the law must be applied fairly. And when you see carve-outs which violate the notion not only of minimum national standards, and Tamara, we followed the case. We were collecting the carbon tax. We never liked it. We've never liked it. But as soon as there was the carve-out, we felt that same treatment in terms of the carbon tax had to be extended in the interest of fairness to the citizens of this province. As well, it is a purely legal issue. Section 126 of the Constitution says that you cannot garnish a province's consolidated revenue fund. That is a legal issue.
But it was a legal issue. It was a legal issue that our province had to remit these carbon taxes
based on minimum national standards.
But you are picking and choosing which laws you want our government to follow and which you don't. Let me ask you this, Justice Minister, because I don't disagree that it was
precisely. I will say what the federal, the Supreme Court justices feared would happen, happened.
But
when
another thing they feared, I don't know that we can
speak for
I don't know that we can speak for the Supreme Court justices on that anybody could have foreseen the the idiocy of Justin Trudeau's move to create this carve-out.
Here's the quote. The potential for playing favorites for reasons that have nothing to do with establishing minimum national standards of price stringency to reduce GHG emissions is obvious. That was one of the justices, and there were several others. And that is what we saw with the Atlantic carve-out. This is about fairness for the people of the province. 85% use natural gas to heat their homes. That's their home heating fuel here in Saskatchewan.
So let me ask you this, because I don't disagree with you. Again, I think it was an idiotic move by the federal Liberals to do that. But if they were to decide, because I want to know how far our provincial government would go on this. If the federal government were to decide to come for our minister responsible for natural gas distribution instead, because we know that Minister Dustin Duncan could face jail time over this, would your government barricade the legislative building and not allow officers to serve him with an arrest warrant?
Well, I think that's a silly question, with all respect.
Well,
yes,
you're refusing to pay the tax. It's breaking the law.
The point is that there is a process, Tamara, under the legislation that governs the carbon tax. And that is being followed. We're making our arguments. They're very strong arguments. The fundamental argument that we are making is under the fair application argument, the fact that as soon as there was an Atlantic carve-out, there was not a national approach to this tax. That's first and foremost. We have other arguments that we are making, which we believe have good chances of success, namely the federal government coming after, regulating and or taxing another level of government in terms of the crowns. And on it goes. We're making those arguments. They will eventually, I assume, make it to federal tax court and on from there.
Do you think your government will be successful in this?
Because we believe in the fair application.
But do you think your government will be successful in this?
We remain very hopeful, and I think the interim injunction, the decision on Friday, was a good first start.
Is this a distraction? Is this a political distraction, Minister Eyre? There's a bunch of lawyers that are saying there's not a chance in heck that you're going to win on this because the Supreme Court in Canada and the appeal court here in Saskatchewan has already ruled the constitutionality of the carbon tax. And there's people that are saying that this is politicking that is used to distract from other behavior from your government.
Which was the politicking happened after the carbon tax decision.
That's true.
And the politicking happened,
and
that was, well, it was politicking also, it was politicking. The point is that really changes the idea of minimum national standards, and it changes everything. And to your question, is it a distraction? Do the people of this province not deserve fundamental fairness as well? Are they not citizens of this country?
I think they deserve transparency.
How is it possible that one province gets its bank account garnished and another province gets a break? What federation are we living in?
Because our province is getting its bank account garnished because it's not paying its taxes. I do think that the Atlantic provinces should be paying the carbon tax just as everybody else should.
I think a lot of people would agree with you, including the citizens of Saskatchewan.
I think so too. And we're going to open up the phone lines because I have no doubt, Minister Eyre, that there's going to be a whole bunch of people that are shouting from the rooftops that they completely agree with everything that you're saying. I think where I have an issue with this is that our Minister of Justice is the one speaking on a file in defense of us breaking the law, and for that reason, it just feels very political.
It's about the fair application of the law. It's about the fair application of the law and about Section 126 of the Constitution, which says that one level of government cannot garnish another level of government's bank account. And that is a fundamental premise of the rule of law, the Constitution of this country. So you take that up with the federal government.
We've had lots of conversations about the Constitution. I mean, I think that we can have a lot more conversations too about how our government in Saskatchewan values the Constitution given its use of the notwithstanding clause. But we're going to have to save that for another time because I am way over my time limit. Minister of Justice Bronwyn Eyre, thank you for taking the time today.
My pleasure, Tamara.